When we look at animals, what do we as Muslims see? There's no denying that animals have played a major role in the Islamic faith. They shape a noticeable part of the enlightenments within the Quran as well as within the Sirah al-Nabawiyyah, the life of the Prophet Muhammad and its subsequent guidance, the Hadiths. So do we see them as bestial residents of this earthly existence, below humanity and meant solely for subservience to humans and their needs? Or do we see them as living, breathing creations of God that have an important place within His larger plan? The answers to these questions or interpretations when examining Quranic scripture and stories from the life of the Prophet are clear and indisputable. So how does such clarity compare with the way Muslims perceive and relate to animals today? The references to animals within Islam's holy book are abundant. Of the 114 surahs or chapters, 6 have animal names. Surah Al-Baqarah, the cow; Surah Al-An'am, the cattle; Surah Al-Nahl, the bee; Surah Al-Naml, the ant; Surah Al-Ankabut, the spider; and Surah Al-Fil, the elephant. That's over 5% of all surahs. Across the Quran, animals are mentioned over 200 times within its various chapters. Animals highlighted include dogs, crows, donkeys, fish, goats, horses, lions, sheep, and many more. Contextually, the mention of animals in the Quran takes on several forms, from the presentation of how vast and great God's creations are, to explanations of the role of the animal world within this worldly life, their role and duty towards Allah, and finally as analogies providing insight into how humans can benefit and learn from observing the animal kingdom in living life along the righteous path. A specific example is Surah Al-Nahl, the bee chapter, that sheds light on how Allah had instructed animals, and in this case, the honeybee. Your Lord inspired the bee. Build your hives in the hills, the trees, and in human dwellings. So eat all kinds of fruits and follow the paths made smooth by your Lord. From their bellies issues a drink of varying hues, able to heal people. And this is a sign for those who think. So the same way in which humanity is commanded by God to go out and seek their existence and in parallel are charged with submission to Allah, the honeybee is also ordered to expand across the world's habitat, to prosper and to create, ultimately as well to believe, to prostrate and pray to Allah. With all these references in the Quran, one can composite a quick and clear picture on the status and importance of animals in this existence. Undeniably, animals do have a role to play in providing humanity with sustenance, labor, protection, and transport. But what the Quran also exhibits is that animals are an integral part of the collective pledge to God. They believe in Him. They shape a part of creation that submits to Allah. They struggle with the alignment of their purpose and their terrestrial existence, and then ultimately will witness judgment before God in the afterlife. A clear takeaway from this is that animals are believers, no different than humanity, no different than the other beings that reside in this worldly life. In the Quran, animals as believers share many characteristics with humans. They supplicate to God, worship with their ability to sense spirituality and the divine. All creatures on the earth and all birds that fly on their wings are communities like you. We have overlooked nothing in the book. Then to their Lord they shall all be gathered. And it's the words, like you, that re-emphasizes and drives the message home. In the surah, God links animals to humans, and how animals, outside of common perceptions today, are not purely resources for human consumption. They have their own lives and purpose, valuable to themselves and to God above and beyond any material value they might provide to humanity. Beyond the Quran, we find the same principles in the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad. Tens, if not hundreds of hadiths echo how animals should not only be perceived by Muslims, but also how they should be treated by their fellow man. The Prophet was extremely vocal about the welfare of animals, and recollections of his stories include a man's vengeful annihilation of ants with fire, a woman's condemnation to hell who had imprisoned and starved a cat to death, and the absolution of a prostitute's sins due to the simple act of quenching a dog's thirst. One such story on the welfare of animals is that of the emaciated camel. When the Prophet was riding with a companion in a palm tree grove, sounds of a camel in suffering fell upon the Prophet's ears. When the Prophet approached and looked upon the camel, he recognized its fatigue, hunger, and pain. The camel's tears began to flow. With overwhelming empathy, the Prophet wiped the brow of the creature, and then it graciously felt comforted. "Who is the master of this camel?" the Prophet called out. A young man approached and claimed, "It is mine, Apostle of Allah." The Prophet replied, "Don't you fear Allah with your treatment of this beast, which He has bestowed upon you? It has complained to me that you keep it hungry and load it heavily, and this pains it." Throughout the hadiths, we recognize the idealized behavior of man towards animals, how the behavior of the Prophet, which is full of compassion, affection, and even at certain points, equality, is the state of being Muslims should aspire and strive to attain. One can also identify certain emotional attributes of animals, that they can feel, that they can cry and moan, feel pain, and can also experience affection and compassion when it's bestowed upon them. The current Muslim mindset, though, puts a huge chasm between animals and humanity. Again, I repeat and confirm the clear resolution in the Quran regarding animals as a source for humanity's sustenance. But the assumption that they're purely a materialistic, without purpose, and unfeeling product, and hence less important to God than humans, is an inaccurate interpretation. All believers are equal in God's omniscience: humanity, jinn, and even animals. We don't have to go far, we simply have to look at another hadith that equates humans to animals. A good deed done to an animal is like a good deed done to a human being, while an act of cruelty to an animal is as bad as cruelty to a human being. So, if retribution for the harming of an animal versus the harming of a human is the same, how can there be any difference between animal and human for God? And if God sees no difference, why do we as humans have the right to do so? Many believe that the mention of animals and their creation in the Quran is purely about the benevolence of Allah towards humanity, that their existence is explicitly meant for the human race to be able to survive and prosper. But we have to move away from this mindset and interpretation that humans are the nafis, the higher beings, and animals the khasis, the lowly beings. Nowhere in doctrine is this position represented within Muslim scripture. This is more of a phenomenon that humanity has conditioned to believe because it considers itself above other creations. This, though, is the un-Muslim way. And with this credence, the point is missed entirely. You see, humanity are the stewards of creation. Being the peak of the food chain and with the most powerful natural computing brainpower, humans are responsible and have an obligation to protect and treat with kindness all the weaker beings, both flora and fauna. To see animals as soulful, beautiful creations, and as important as their own existence. That is the Muslim way. And when we revisit and examine how Muslims feel and act towards animals, how we act in our day-to-day lives when dealing with animals, we witness more of the practices that lead Muslims away from the righteous path. How we view animals is then not only about how we perceive them as inferior beings to the high and mighty humanity, but about how we are uncompassionate in our dealings with these fellow believers. And this painful story is one I'll leave for another episode.